I can't think of a single problem that could confront me that wouldn't have a favorable side to it. If nothing else, the favorable side would consist in the fact that I would say that if it's a problem I can solve, I will solve it, and if it's a problem I can't solve, I'll not worry about it. And that's something. But the majority of people, when they're confronted with difficult propositions or problems that they can't solve, they start worrying, and then they go into what kind of a state of mind? Negative state of mind. And do you ever accomplish anything worthwhile when you're in that state of mind? No, you don't. You're only muddying the water when you make your mind negative. You never accomplish anything worthwhile. You have to learn to keep your mind positive all the time when you want to do things worthwhile. Struggling in a rat race. I'm not speaking in a derogatory manner, you understand, of Bing. Bing's a friend of mine, and I greatly admire him, but I'm speaking of all people in that category who pay too much for trying to get things that they don't need. Now, this is a philosophy dealing with economic success. But success wouldn't consist in your destroying your life and dying too young because you tried to get too much of anything. Stop when you get enough. Make better use of the things you have right now instead of trying to get a lot of more things that you're not going to make any use of at all. Oh, what a wonderful thing it is, that statement that comes out of the Bible. I won't translate it verbatim, but the meaning of it is not too much, not too little of anything. Not too much, not too little. Just enough of everything. Want to learn what is enough? Which says that a challenge to life, which says, life, you can't subdue me because I refuse to take your discipline too seriously. When you try to hurt me, I laugh, and laughter knows no pain. I appreciate your joys wherever I find them. Your sorrows neither discourage nor frighten me, for there is laughter in my soul. Temporary defeat does not make me sad. I simply set music to the words of defeat and turn it into a song. Your tears are not for me. I like laughter much better. And because I like it, I use it as a substitute for grief and sorrow and pain and disappointment. Life, you are a fickle trickster. Don't deny it. You slipped this emotion of love into my heart so that you might use it as a thorn with which to prick my soul. But I learned to dodge your trap with laughter. You try to lure me with the desire for gold, but I have fooled you by following the trail which leads to knowledge instead. You induce me to build beautiful friendships, then convert my friends into enemies, so you may harden my heart. But I sidestep your fickleness by laughing off your attempt and selecting new friends in my own way. You cause men to cheat me at trade, so I will become distrustful. But I win again, because I possess one precious asset which no man can steal. It is the power to think my own thoughts and to be myself. You threaten me with death, but to me death is nothing worse than a long, peaceful sleep, and sleep is the sweetest of human experiences, excepting laughter. You build a fire of hope in my heart, then sprinkle water on the flames. But I go you one better by rekindling the fire, and I laugh at you once more. Life, you are licked as far as I'm concerned, because you have nothing with which to lure me away from laughter, and you are powerless to scare me into submission. To a life of laughter, then, I raise my cup of cheer. You kick off the starter, and then you shut your eyes for a few moments, and you see yourself sitting on top of a nice new Cadillac. And as she purrs down the street, as you give her the gas, you imagine right now that you already have, you know you own this Cadillac, but you don't exactly have possession of it. But for the time being, you're there at the wheel of your Cadillac. Sounds silly, doesn't it? It may sound silly, but it is not silly. I can assure you it's not silly. I talked myself into my first Rolls Royce that very way. Did I ever tell you about how I got my first Rolls Royce? Do you remember that? Am I putting myself out on a limb one evening in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, saying that I was going to have it that before the week was over and I didn't have enough money in the bank to get it? My student, sitting right in that audience, who had exactly the same car that I described, even down to the wire, the orange-colored wire wheels.
And he called me at my hotel next morning and said, "Come on down and I have your car, Mr. Hill." And I went down there and he had it. He had the legal transfer made out, and the keys he had ready to hand to me. All he wanted to show me was a little trick or two that you had to know about a Rolls Royce in order to get the best results out of it. He took me down Riverside Drive. We drove a little bit, and he got out and shook hands with him and said, "Well, Mr. Hill, I'm very happy to have had the privilege of letting you have this nice car." Wasn't that a wonderful thing for a man to do? Now, he hadn't said, nothing had been said about price. He said, "Well, the price, you fix the price. I'll tell you what I paid for it." But he said, "You need it worse than I do. I don't actually need it at all. But you do need it, and I want you to have it." Be careful what you set your heart upon through obsessional desire, for the subconscious mind goes to work on translating that desire into its material equivalent. Self-discipline. You have to be in charge. You've got to call the shots and see that they're carried out. And you have to have self-discipline with which to do it. That's how you go about keeping your mind off the things you don't want, by occupying your mind and seeing in your imagination the things that you do want. Even though you don't have physical possession of them, you can always have mental possession, don't you know? And unless you have mental possession of a thing first, you'll never have a physical possession of it. You may be sure of that, unless somebody wishes it upon you or it falls on you out off the top of a house when you're walking by accidentally. Anything that you get or acquire by desire must be created and gotten in your mental attitude first. And you must be very sure about it there. You must see yourself in possession of it, and that takes self-discipline. His passive enthusiasm, thinking inside of his own mind what it was he was going to do and all the joy he'd get out of doing it. I once asked him, this was long after he had arrived and had his problems whipped, I asked him if he ever wanted anything or wanted to do anything he couldn't do. He said, no, and then he qualified himself, not in recent years. He said in the early days, until he learned how to get or to do whatever he wanted to do, he couldn't answer in the affirmative. And I said, well, in other words, Mr. Ford, there isn't anything that you need or want or that you can't get. He said, that's right, that's correct. Well, I said, how do you know that's true? And how do you go about making sure that whatever you want to do, you know you're going to do it before you start? He said, well, for a long time, I've formed the habit of putting my mind on the can-do part of every problem. If I have a problem, there's always something I can do about it. Many things I can't do, but something I can do, and I start where I can do something. And he said, as I use up the can-do part of it, the no-can-do simply just vanishes. When I get to the river where I expected to have a bridge, I didn't need the bridge because the river was dry. Now, isn't that a marvelous thing for a man to make a statement like that? That he started in on his problem or his objective where he could do something. And he said if he wanted to turn out a new model, if he wanted to turn out increase his production, he immediately put his mind to work on the plan through which he could do that. And he never paid any attention to the obstacles because he knew that if his plan was sufficiently strong and definite and backed with the right kind of a faith, that the opposition that he might meet with would melt away when he came to it. And he said an astounding thing was that if you took that attitude of putting your mind behind the can-do part of every problem, the no-can-do part takes to its heels and runs. And I'm quoting his words. I could endorse everything that he has said because that's been my experience. My experience has been that if you want to do something, you'll work yourself up into a state of white enthusiasm, go to work where you stand, if it's nothing more than drawing a picture in your mind of the thing you want to do, and keep drawing that picture and making it more vivid all the time. That insofar as you make use of the tools that are available to you now to move with, will other and better tools be put in your hands. That's one of the strange things of life, but that's the way it works. Public speakers, teachers, because they'll probably call the psychiatric ward and want to know if they can't come down and tend to have a relative down there that's gone berserk. Use discrimination and all these things, but really and truly, you've got an overhauling job to do on yourself. We all have, at one time or another at least. You've got to do an overhauling job. I want to attain to a greater degree of proficiency all the time. My education is never completed. It's wide open all the time. You know, as long as you're green, you continue to grow, but when you get to where you're ripe with knowledge, then the next step is to become rotten. I don't want to be ripe.